It's the climax of Hickman's Fantastic Four and Avengers run, and it's also the end of the Ultimate Marvel Universe. So why did something about Secret Wars feel so underwhelming? Woof! Hey guys, it's me Marcus, aka the Mad Dog, and we're back with another video. Written by Jonathan Hickman and illustrated by Asad Ribish, the first issue of Secret Wars was published by Marvel Comics in May of 2015, with the 9th and final issue being released in January of 2016. And the reality we once knew is no more. In its place is Battleworld, a land comprised of fragments of universes that once were, and led by the most powerful ruler, God Doom. But with the last resistance of the dead world desperately trying to save the day, will it be enough? We're jumping into the art section, and let's start by addressing an absolute truth. There are not many people who can do what Ribish does, and especially when it comes to the big two publishers. But there is very much a set style when it comes to one of these events. You've normally got your Kuberts, or your Copial, or your Amita Juniors, or your Ivan Rice's working on it, so to have somebody like Ribish come in, and yeah, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, there's no disrespect intended if I'm wrong, but it just meant that Secret Wars had a different tone to it that set itself apart from pretty much every other event. Especially once the incursion had happened, it had this very ethereal and almost dreamlike look to it, which kind of feels appropriate when you're in one of these alternate universe stories. Before this, I'd only ever seen him work on Thor, which already had that otherworldly feel to it, and I'm just glad that that carried across into Secret Wars. And as well, knowing that God Doom's world isn't the regular Marvel universe just made me so intrigued to want to see more of this. The landscapes were vast, the sense of scale felt endless, and every scene just felt like there was so much life and passion in it. But I do just think it's a shame that within this event there isn't as much of an opportunity for him to showcase all of his skills. Especially after the first issue, a lot of the action did feel a bit more slow and methodic. Sure, yeah, that dynamic might work for the story, but for the art it felt like it was reluctant to get up close and personal. And as such, it falls into that category that a lot of the battles can feel more like a series of highlights than an actual fight. There were also some pages where it didn't feel as refined as the rest of the series, which is a problem I've noticed in a few events, and I don't know if it's because of the scheduling or the fact that they added an extra issue into this, but some of the pages still felt like they were in that sketch phase, which is surprising because of how great the really good pages were. And also, I think it was in House of M that I noticed a similar technique, but there'd be a lot of panels where there'd just be a block of white or a block of black, or an entire page that just had 3 words on it, and I was like, are you trying to cut a few corners here? Do you have a page count and you're not sure you're gonna get to there, so this is the route that you took? My biggest gripe with Ribish though was, despite how beautiful all of his backgrounds and scenery was, a lot of his faces just didn't look right. And it's especially irritating because for every example where he does do that, there's a counter argument where he does it right. Or proportions would just look completely off and people would be moving in a way that wasn't humanly possible. And no, I'm not talking about Reed Richards. There'd be a scene where Black Panther would twist his arm in such a way that it would physically break his own wrist if he managed to do it. And as soon as I saw that page, I wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt, so I got one of my hot toys down and I kept twisting and twisting. And then I realised I didn't want to risk it anymore. I just wish it would have been consistent throughout, because especially in the first issue, this book is phenomenally beautiful. And it's clear to see what Ribish is capable of, and I just wish we could have seen that for the full 9 issues. And regardless of a few nitpicks, the great moments were still great, and it's clear to see why this garnered so much acclaim. And yeah, it does make me wish that I hadn't slept on that oversized hardcover. I'm still kicking myself for not having that in the collection. I don't know, I'm still going to keep your fingers crossed that they come out with some kind of omnibus, and if they did and you want to pick up that, or any of the other Hickman omnibuses, you can get them with the discount codes that we've got with the channel sponsor, Organic Price Books. They've got great packaging, fast shipping, and amazing customer services, and if you use code WOOFWOOF, you'll get $2 off your order. And if you're ordering 3 or more books and you want them to be delivered together, make sure you use code WOOFWOOF, ship it together for 5% off your entire order. Don't worry, you can just copy and paste them from the description down below, and you can use these codes as many times as you like. We're jumping into the story now, and Secret Wars is a tricky one to review because there's 2 completely separate ways that you can read this, and neither give you the same experience. On one hand, there's the climax to Hickman's magnum opus that started with Fantastic Four, carried through into his work with the Avengers and the Ultimate Universe. This is a very satisfying payoff where all of those strands come together and tell a conclusion on the biggest scale that very few stories get a chance to. On the other hand though, reading this as the big event that Marvel put out for 2015, because we can't go a year without having one of these things, it feels like a less enjoyable version of House of M. And part of the blame for that second group might be on Marvel Unlimited, because I tried to find a read-through that would include all the most important tie-ins, and there just wasn't one. So for this review, I did only read the main event, and I feel like that might have impacted my enjoyment. But at the same time, if it's integral, why not throw it into the main event? Because for the most part, Secret Wars felt like this hub that was advertising these more exciting tie-ins that were happening on Battleworld, and the main event was just 90% waiting around for God Doom to do something. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed a ton of the concepts they introduced. The army of Thors, Captain Britain's involvement, the Doom Guards, the way that some of the Battleworld factions are referenced, and it felt like the Cursed Earth part of Judge Dredd. All of that was great and I was thoroughly entertained by it. I just really wanted more. And it's similar to what I said in my review of East of West, because it's clear that Hickman understands everything that's going on in this world, but at a certain point it feels like he's trying hard to prove that he knows more about this world than he's letting you know, than he is trying to showcase the best story that he could make with this world that he's created. Because as I was reading this, every time there was something introduced that I thought was going to be an integral part to the main story, he just left it. Like, you do get to see the zombie world and the symbiote universe and the apocalypse world, but this feels like the equivalent of when you were a kid and you'd be in the backseat of your parents' car and they'd be driving and you'd go past something like Alton Towers or a theme park or something that you really want to go to, and you'd be like, oh, I really wish we could be there, but then they keep driving and you end up in B&Q. And it's disappointing because once that ooh factor faded, I realised that there was a lot of nothing happening in each issue. There are a ton of scenes of people just standing around saying that something's going to happen or that a faction's advancing, but then they just decide to not show us that. And every single issue built it up like it was going to be the one where Thanos was going to face off against God Doom, but it didn't, and it just felt like they were getting further away from each other each and every time. Now don't get me wrong, that scene does happen and it feels like a massive payoff when it finally comes, but I just felt like there was no reason why that scene couldn't have happened sooner. And honestly, can someone tell me why this was extended by an issue? Because I got the feeling that they could have cut out 2 or 3. And yeah, I mentioned House of M at the beginning, and some people could argue that that's just a rip-off of Age of Apocalypse, but that comparison didn't leave the entire time that I was reading Secret Wars, and we just had God Doom instead of Magneto. And if I am comparing the 2 events, I feel like I might be in the minority with this one, but I did prefer House of M. And yeah, in all honesty, that might be impacting my enjoyment of Secret Wars, but at the end of the day, it's natural to compare these things whilst you're reading them. But despite saying that though, there's still a lot that I enjoyed with Secret Wars, and one thing where House of M can't beat this is with the villain. God Doom was phenomenal, and a powerful enough figure that you could believe that he's the one that the rest of the world would fall in line with. His power and the prowess, while still not being completely detached from the Victor Von Doom that you know from the regular Marvel universe, meant that he was the best part of this entire event for me. And again, it's great because I had read Hickman's Fantastic Four earlier on this year, and I felt like Doom was really diminished in that, so I'm just glad that Hickman got a chance to really utilise him to his full potential, and it really paid off and even exceeded my expectations. On the flip side though, I don't feel like I saw enough of the heroes to really rally behind them, beyond just the really obvious explanation of wanting the world to be returned to normal, and having this team made up of regular Marvel Universe and Ultimate Marvel characters was a fascinating concept. Star-Lord did have a good handful of scenes in this as well, and it felt like he was an odd inclusion at first, and I suspected it was probably because of the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, so he was mostly just there for the name recognition and so that he could be some kind of comedic relief. And in all honesty, I wish he would have stepped out of that role a little bit, especially towards the end, and maybe had a bit more of a bigger impact, but either way, it's just nice to see him in this. And even before reading this, I knew this was the event that brought Miles into the regular 616 universe, and I was excited to see his involvement within Secret Wars, but unfortunately neither of the Spider-Men did much in this event, and it felt like they were waiting around until the worlds were restored. Again, it just feels like a bit of a missed opportunity. Sue Storm was in the same boat as well. At first, I was excited to see her so close to God Doom, and it did make you ask questions like, oh, where's Reed Richards of this world? Probably in the Interdimensional Council. But it feels like she's solely in this to provide exposition when it's needed, and towards the end that gets quite ham-fisted. However, there were some characters that really surprised me in a good way with how they were utilised, such as Mr. Sinister and Ben Grimm, and there was a layer of tragedy when it came to the Thing that I really didn't expect. And it's weird because I remembered that he's going to live for millenniums because of what was established during Hickman's run. Actually, speaking on Mr. Sinister, all of Doom's generals were great, and I liked getting those clues towards the political structure of this new world. And as well, I just really liked the setting of Battleworld because for once it was just nice to not be in New York or the Savage Lands, because the world is far more bigger than that and it feels like they never get any of the spotlight. Take for example, if you're in Europe, you might want free shipping and free gifts with every order, in which case the only place you need to go is Comics Bugle. And a little bonus for you, if you use code WOOFWOOF, you'll get 3% off all items that aren't already in a sale. However, despite a lot of my criticisms, I don't want people thinking I hated this event or that it was bad, it's just that I'm really in two minds with it. Because even though it was few and far between, one of the aspects where Secret Wars really delivered was with the action. Especially the opening issue where it's chaotic, everybody's fighting everything, the sky's red, you don't know what's happening. There is so much going on here mixed in with those quieter moments that I felt like this was one of the best opening issues of any of these big company-wide crossovers. But at the same time it was offset with these smaller, more quieter but still tense moments, and bringing that all together with the intrigue that I felt made this one of the most interesting opening issues that I've ever read for any of these big company-wide crossovers. And from the opening issue alone and how much action there was, it made it feel like this was going to be one of those titles that met the hype that preceded it. And as well, despite saying that, there was still a great fight that went on in the second issue between Mr. Sinister and Captain Britain. That was tense, one-on-one, and brought a completely different vibe with it. And I thought the final battle was going to be one of those big grand scale spectacles, but that's kind of happening in the background, and left behind quite a bit of the baggage and made it more personal and having it just between the final incursion survivors and also God Doom. The scenes where the Thors were in operation was interesting as well. I know they got a spin-off which I was tempted to read, but I thought if I'm gonna do this right, it's either gonna be all or nothing. But that is one of the books that if I could go back and read this again for a first time, I'd probably throw that one in. And that's why, like I said at the beginning, I'm a bit disappointed that I couldn't find a proper reading order for this. Because is it really fair for me to judge Secret Wars just on its own? Because if I judge Flashpoint just on the 5 issues, I probably wouldn't enjoy that as much. And I was interested by a lot of Battleworld that we got brief glimpses of. I just wish that the main event wouldn't be so reluctant to show us more of it. But instead, if it all felt like one interwoven story that I know Hickman's capable of, I think I really would have enjoyed that much more. But the thing is, even though it has been a few years since I read all of Hickman's Avengers run, which is ironic because I'm currently reading it again from his September reviews, even from those very early issues years before, there were seeds that were being planted that would only blossom in Secret Wars. And I love that, and it's why I'm saying that this is such a worthy payoff if you've gone through that entire journey. And from the beginning of New Avengers, the Illuminati was working so hard to try and prevent them from happening. Secret Wars is the realization that all of that was for nothing because it was going to happen anyway. So I love that there's so many extra layers to it that reward you more for the more of Hickman's work that you've read. And regardless of my problems with the core 9 issues, I can't deny the fact that this works exceptionally well as the destination to a journey rather than it being the journey itself. And I'm having this internal struggle because how much allowance does that give when it comes to something that I'm reading for entertainment? Because do I enjoy what Secret Wars does within these 9 issues, or do I enjoy it more for what it means to the conclusion of this grand epic? And at the same time, why not just succeed at doing both? So it is a bit of a struggle to recommend a book that needs you to read so much before it just so you can enjoy these 9 issues. So because of that fact, it made it feel like Secret Wars only really existed so that you could merge the 616 and Ultimate Universes together, and the story kind of became second fiddle. And personally, besides a few key scenes, I don't feel like Secret Wars is as rewarding when it's on its own. And sure, yeah, maybe this is another debate that I'm just on the wrong side of again. It won't be the first time and it wouldn't be the last, but I can't help but want to give my honest thoughts about this book. And overall, there was just something that I felt was lacking from Secret Wars when I think about it on its own. But I don't know, I'm trying to keep it balanced, but I feel like there's going to be a subsect of the internet that is going to give me backlash regardless of what I say. And you know what? You may feel like it means nothing, but one day I'm just going to have enough of it and I'm going to turn this entire channel into a Jamiroquai podcast. So don't test me because one day it's going to be too much and I'm just going to do it. We're jumping into the spoiler section now, and there's not much that I want to talk about in here. The main thing is God Doom versus Thanos. Yeah, admittedly, as I was going through this book, I hoped this was going to be a grand epic battle, but having Doom just rip out his skeleton in one fell swoop, you know what? That kind of lived up to the hype. All of a sudden I realised I didn't need a big fight between these two because I wouldn't get as much satisfaction as I would have done with the moment that we actually got. And good on Hickman and Marvel for, even though it being an alternate universe take, allowing that to happen on the page. This is the reason why he was such a great enemy, because as much as I was comparing it to House of M, you're never really going to see Magneto doing that, unless it's Wolverine's skeleton, but I don't want to get by on a technicality. One other scene that I want to talk about is the conclusion with Miles and Peter. Why was there just no real comment from either of these two? Like, one of you is going to be in a completely different world than the one that you knew before. Or maybe this is my dumb reader self not understanding the full thing, but if the worlds have merged, there's still a chance that things might be different or missing. And I don't know, I think I was just expecting more from this aspect of the book in particular. But either way, it's crazy to think about it now because Miles has been in the regular 616 universe for so long that he pretty much just feels like a staple of it. So I have to give respect to Secret Wars for being able to do that so effortlessly. This is my final verdict. and it's incredible how timing can impact the enjoyment of a story. Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars is very much like an optical illusion in comic form, because for somebody who's gone through the wild ride of the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, Infinity, and everything else that got caught up in between, it's a triumph and payoff to a setup that's been years in the making. But without that context, it very much feels like a pale imitation of earlier events, where the majority of the story is taking place outside of the main title, leaving me with 9 issues that were mostly just waiting around and references to more exciting stories that weren't happening on the panel that was in front of me. But regardless of how you approach Secret Wars, the prowess of God Doom and his building conflict with Thanos is enough to keep this event interesting. The Assad ribbish art, despite a few hiccups, is like nothing else that you'll see from a big company-wide crossover, and the effect it had on the history of characters such as the Maker and Miles Morales cannot be understated. So there is still a lot to love here, and even more that I'm discovering as I revisit Hickman's Avengers. So make sure you look out for that review, because I might have to come back to Secret Wars for that video. But I can't sit here and pretend that Secret Wars really holds up well on its own. And for as much as I might get backlash for saying that and get labelled as a dumb reader, which is no surprise if you've been on this channel before, it's crucial to know that if you're not going to read the entire Hickman Marvel experience. But then again, some series just are like that and we have to accept it. I can't imagine King Thor's half as enjoyable if you haven't already read Jason Aaron's Thor run. So had Secret Wars just been a crossover between the Avengers titles with a few tie-ins here and there, it would have been the absolute cherry on top. But it does feel like this is just another step in Marvel giving a creator an entire event so that they can advertise their other run. We've seen it with Siege, War of the Realms, Devil's Reign, Empire, and out of those titles I feel like Secret Wars is the most high profile, so you might get some new readers thinking they can just jump into this. And for as much as I'm saying had this gone a different direction it would have been the cherry on top, at the moment all we've got here is the cherry. And I want some cake. But if I had to sum up Secret Wars in one sentence, save this for the right time and you will have the best experience, otherwise you might be a little bit underwhelmed. But that's a review, and like I said, it's the last one in this year's season of events. But I've had a great time and I hope you have as well. Admittedly though, I am looking forward to reading something other than an event. But until next time, just make sure you stay safe and stay mad all you dogs. Woof woof! See you at the next video.